Hi YouTube. In this video, I'm going to be filming the process of making a Maid Right sandwich. Maid Right, or Iowa loose meat. It is a sandwich that is popular in the Midwest. There is a restaurant chain is famous for making these sandwiches. It's a way that's different for using up loose hamburger that you've either pre-cooked or you're just cooking from scratch. And it's a different recipe than maybe sloppy joe's, chili, or spaghetti. But you can turn it into, you can eat this as it is, or you can build it just like a regular hamburger. The nice thing about this is if you are using cooked hamburger, you don't have to worry about getting fresh to make hamburger patties. And even though this stands on its own or with toppings, you can also make large batches of this and then turn it into something else, because the seasoning is settled enough that it pairs back into those things like chili, tacos, spaghetti, or something that has a richer base. So this is something that we'll get started doing. Before I do, I am going to follow the steps mostly as the recipe says. What I'm doing different is I will be using a combination of chicken and hamburger, even though the recipe doesn't call for that, because doing that still works in this recipe and I need to stretch my budget. Second, I also will season this, but you can add the dry seasonings at the end or the beginning. Third, I'm going to suggest a couple of alternative ways to serve this. I'll be doing it on a bun, but this will be my lunch for the week. And if you're on keto, a couple of ways you can have this is by itself on a keto bun, or I sometimes make a round cheese crisp like a tostada and eat it on that. Just a couple different things you can do, or bread works. So let's go ahead and get started and I'll show you the process. Oh, I'm also going to be making a larger batch of hamburger than what I'll actually be using in the recipe, strictly because when I use the dry seasoning, the same thing goes into all my hamburger. I'm going to be cooking a large batch and putting it in my canner and freezer for meals that are different later. So you might notice that there's a big batch and then it gets reduced. And I apologize, you're gonna hear my canner going and my laundry. I'm a little short on time today, so I have to multitask. Let's get started. Hi guys, so let's go ahead and get started. Sorry. Let's get started. In this, I can't show my counter. I don't have space right now to push things back, so I'll just hold things up. In this recipe, we're gonna make about 2.5 pounds worth of meat. So you're going to need meat. I'm gonna use chicken and hamburger. You're going to need mustard. This is optional, but the recipe I'm using calls for beef bouillon. You're going to need some of that, salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. Again, traditionally made with this, but if you're picky, you don't have to add this, or you can go easy on the ingredients. This is not something that it calls for, but that's what I like in my meat, so I'm using it. In the recipe, you're going to need 2 pounds of ground beef. You're going to need a tablespoon of this, Actually, let's change the order. You're gonna first need the meat, and I forgot the onions. Sorry, let's try this again. So you have the meat, you're gonna need onions. The recipe calls for half. I think I'm gonna use about a third of this container to half of it. I'm gonna use a little more because I'm making a large batch of meat. So you're gonna brown that first. And then after it's browned, you're going to add half a cup of water and a tablespoon of this. Tablespoon of mustard, tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, and also you need a tablespoon of sugar. I forgot to grab that. I'll get it later. So let's get started browning the hamburger. I think I forgot to tell you that the recipe calls for onion and garlic powder. I'm going to be seasoning with that. It's about a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons, but I'm just going to sprinkle my seasonings because I can eyeball things and I'm making this as a base. Start putting things in the pot. You're going to cook the meat and onions together. Get out of there, Raven. Cats like garbage and cats like meat products. They have a mind of their own, don't they? So, got everything in a pot. I'm going to put the onion in with the meat. We're going to brown everything. I'm going to just reserve some of these onions for chili. I'm putting garlic in this. The recipe doesn't call for it, but again, this meat is not just going into the Maid Right. This is a whole batch of meat that I'm also gonna can. We're gonna get this started and then I'll briefly pause the video. I'm using a larger pot because it's gonna allow me to steam it easier. So you wanna make sure that you use something that will brown your hamburger but also allow you to put some liquid in there. You won't be putting a lot, but it's okay. The nice thing about this recipe is it gets the extra fat out of the meat. And turn the wrong burner on. If you have trouble digesting meat or chewing, it tenderizes the meat a little bit. And this recipe, the seasonings are subtle enough that a lot of kids like this too. I'm just going to season this up real quick. Put a lot of garlic and onion powder in ours. I'm a little bit of a messy cooker. Sorry. You're still going to chop this really well, and as it continues to brown, you'll continue with that process. Once you get it steaming, which will be the step after the browning, you'll be able to really get this finely chopped. Okay, so put these away. less seasoning in this than I normally would, simply because, again, I need this to be subtle in flavor. And when you can meat, which is what I'll be doing in another video, it seems to make the flavors of the seasonings you use come out more. So I'm being mindful of that. These browns, I'm going to get some vinegar for my lids. Guys, I'm gonna let this brown because it's gonna take a little bit, and then I'll come back. Okay guys, I'm back. Hamburger's done. And let's get started on the sauce. I'm gonna need a half cup of water. A little more than that in there because this is 2 pounds and it's been a little dry. And you're gonna need seasoning. I'm just eyeballing things. I know about how much to put in. You may want to measure it if this is your first time making it. That's what we do. This is life, right? You only want about a tablespoon or 2, depending on how strong you want the flavor. You do sugar. This is a tablespoon. You don't want it real sweet. You can skip this step. And some people too use brown sugar. I'm just choosing this method. I don't like it real sweet, and I don't like the molasses in it. And then you want the Worcestershire, about a tablespoon. I like this a little more savory. Finally, the mustard. And we don't want the mustard to overpower this, you just want it subtle. Now we are going to put a lid on this and let the meat steam up. We're going to continue to break this up as the meat cooks. We don't want a lot of water left in the meat, just enough to get the meat to absorb it into a really light sauce. This isn't messy like a sloppy Joe. And the broth will tenderize the meat. So you'll just kind of keep breaking this up as it cooks and mixing everything together. All right, I'll see you back here. This is what it looks like when it's all done. This is what it looks like all done. I'm eating half of one. I put cheese and dill relish on mine. Usually I just do pickles. And I do an open faced, but you know. Hope you guys enjoy the recipe. Take care. Oh, I forgot. As a side, I have corn on the cob with this, or a can of corn. I forgot to open it, so I'm going to do that now. But this will go good with any vegetable or like cottage cheese or something. Anyways, Peace out. Take care, y'all.